Now guys, Mercedes-Benz do a lot of testing on their cars, and I'm at their proving ground in Germany at the moment where they're doing this. Yes, this was a test without ABS on a slippery surface, but this one is just one of 30 tests they have here. Every single Mercedes-Benz goes through extreme testing here, and they even let me do that in a minute, and we also get to see what this guy does. But first, where is this place? This is Mercedes-Benz's proving ground in Immendingen. The short version, they can test every single aspect of a car here. They have a light testing facility, country-specific roads simulating different types of tarmac, a simulation called the Automated Heidi Endurance Run where they autonomously test cars 24/7, rain or shine, with centimetre precision. Yes, you heard me right, there's no one in these cars. Look, no driver. They perform these tests to simply put a car through its paces almost 365 days a year. Emergency stops, driving through large puddles, which I should add also helps cool the suspension off after being subjected to this. The amount of research that they do here is insane, and you heard me mention about the new light testing facility, right? Mercedes have built one of the darkest places at their secret base, all for monitoring, developing and improving their headlights. And not just any headlights, digital light. Now, digital light has actually featured on my channel before. I actually drove a car locally to where I live in Poole, and yeah, let's just say that the tech on digital light is incredible, and the one that was being showcased here is the Generation 2 of that headlight, which is even better and quite fitting because they can test it out in their new facility. Basically, for those of you who haven't seen it, it applies full beam everywhere, but then cutting out reflected road signs to reduce reflections, reducing glare for cyclists and of course cars and trucks and lorries, all being carefully optimized and calibrated for the road. And if you spotted it, it's also on the new GLC from the looks of it as well, although they didn't really show that too much there, but I spotted that grille. So yeah, the fact that this is a second generation potentially of digital light, I might have to check that out in the future when it launches, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Then there's the sun test. Now, our eyes are incredible bits of kit. They can of course see very, very bright sources of light and everything throughout the day, but then also, even when it gets really, really dark at night time, we can still see to a degree. But they do have their limitations, and those limitations also carry over to cameras as well, fitted on cars. This is of course very, very important going forward because obviously a lot of cars these days have speed limit warnings, brake assist systems, or even lane assist systems as well, and if you've got the sun blinding that camera sensor, it could become a bit of a problem. We've all seen it before. This happens during driving in scenarios just like this, where the sun is very, very low down to the ground, but then it almost like literally just cuts out any objects in front of it. This is known as glare, and Mercedes being Mercedes, they recreated the sun. Well, the effect of anyway. So here you see the pedestrian and then you don't. So using this special light that they fitted to the back of this truck, which is patented apparently, it literally looks like the sun from a distance. And as you see, we move the camera across slightly, suddenly the pedestrian disappears. So this basically recreates what the sun effects can have on our eyes, but then also on camera sensors as well, so they can help develop and make them better. This of course is very, very important, especially as autonomous cars are coming. We need them to be reliable and we need them to be able to see, even if it's just a little bit sunny. Now, have you seen these before? Basically, Euro NCAP have a few of these as well, where they basically do crash tests and all sorts of things, but Mercedes use them specifically here to prevent crashes. So rather than putting them in cars like crash test dummies, these are used in crash prevention. And yes, they can move pretty realistically, well, I say realistically, fairly realistically to a car's camera anyway, although I don't know why they needed to add sound effects to make it sound like the Terminator. They basically move on this floating platform, and with millimeter precision I should add, they can carry out the same procedure in exactly the same way, and it's all for this. Now, what happened there was completely autonomous braking, so the car and the motorcycle were basically on a path that were going to collide, and the car basically worked out the trajectory of both car and motorcycle with the speeds involved and the timing, and it basically just came to a complete stop. However, look what happens if the motorcycle leaves basically a second earlier. No alert and no action, so there's no need to brake if there's no collision. But then there's the question of when to brake, because if you brake too early, you could end up potentially causing an accident on the car behind you, because then they would, rear end you. But then also if you brake too late, you can end up hitting the thing you were trying to avoid in the first place. So Mercedes-Benz have been researching this for years, and they've kind of got that sort of threshold down to a T now, where they can basically just prevent a lot of crashes from happening, or at least reduce the severity. Oh yes, and weather. What about if it's raining? Well, when I visited, there was no rain, so Mercedes actually have a way of simulating different weather conditions, such as mist being thrown up from the road, or a full-blown tropical storm, again, for all the purposes of research and development. But then they wanted to get me involved, and they wanted me to drive a car with ABS, and then no ABS, and then also traction control, and then no traction control on some very slippery surfaces. Basically, I just needed to drive as quickly as possible, then immediately slam on the brakes, and while braking, turn to follow the path, which for those of you that know your cars, without ABS was kind of what you saw at the start. You'll just brake and skid forward. So here's my run without ABS. And then with ABS, as you can see, this one's going to be a lot more controlled. And then the traction control test. Accelerate very fast and take a sharp turn to avoid something, but while on a wet surface, which in this maneuver and at these speeds would get the back end out. Again, it's pushing to see where these limits are, because if you don't know where the limit is, you can't improve. Oh yeah, and the one thing that really surprised me is this. They recreated the entire facility on what they call a digital twin, down to, I think it was millimeter precision. So basically, every little bump in the road, every barrier, every tree, every animal, every hill has been literally recreated digitally. So if you didn't want to go out and obviously try out all this stuff, as a Mercedes-Benz engineer, you can test it out in the simulation first. That's insane. Apparently it was about 4 or 5 terabytes worth of data. So yes, they have loads of different facilities here for testing. Now sadly I couldn't go around to every single one, otherwise I probably would have been there for the entire week. But it's amazing to see that Mercedes-Benz are putting this much effort into research and development for the next car.